All righty. Hello, Michelle. And hello, everyone else coming in. We might give everyone 30 seconds to type in their passcode for Zoom. And then we'll get moving. But thank you very much for joining us. Michelle, James, and Amy, and Nils. I think we should just get going. What do you think, James?
I think we should get going.
Welcome, everyone, to this smart lighting webinar where we're going to go through the MAV program, how these projects work, a lot on smart lighting and the next steps and sort of best practice smart lighting processes that we can take you through. I would like to start by acknowledging the First Nations people throughout the land. We are speaking in the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation here in Melbourne or Narn, and I would like to acknowledge that we are on their land as traditional owners and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Alexi Lynch. I'm the Operations Manager at Ironbark Sustainability. We've got quite a few people to assist you on call today from Ironbark and from MAV. We've got Steve Downs, who's the Business Manager of Relationships at MAV. Steve's been at MAV for about 10 years and so knows this sort of stuff off by heart. In the office here, we've got James Ross Tate. We've also got Keith Harwood, I think, somewhere, who's just gone off screen, who runs the lighting team and taking us through most of the presentation later on. We've got Ross James McCurdy, who's going to take us through all of the background of the lighting projects that we run. We're going to have a lot of time for Q&A, so don't feel like you can't get all of your questions out today. We will be able to answer, I reckon, every technical, regulatory, project management, finance question that you've got. So welcome, great to have you along. Here is the agenda today. We're going to go through what is the MAV support program, a little bit about MAV and Ironbark and some of the responses that we got in advance about where councils are at. And so you can get an understanding about, I guess, some of the fellow issues or the issues that your colleagues have got and the challenges and what everyone is doing about them. Some street lighting best practice, a little bit about Opticity, which is, I think it was named the best street lighting Australian software in the world last year, and a comment on the future being smart, and then 30 minutes of technical Q&A if we need it. What we're kind of saying there is we'll just stick around until you've got all of your questions done and they can be as technical and nerdy as you like. Really informal as always. We like to keep it relaxed, and so look, jump in with questions using the your chat box first. But if you want anything clarified, please don't feel like you can't just put your hand up and check in. We are recording, so this will be available post-webinar. Keep yourself on mute. You should automatically be on mute, but I don't know, sometimes technology seems to work or people just unclick. But we prefer you to not be on mute unless you've got a question, in which case we'll unmute you. And yeah, jump into the chat box, use the 2 dots and ask whatever you would like. And if you can, turn your camera on. Let's see who's going to turn their camera on with this particular question. Oh, Michelle and Keith. Look, if you're in the bathroom, keep it off. If you're in the bedroom, it might be a bit weird. I don't know. There are probably other reasons. There are definitely some reasons. Nils, that's okay. There are some reasons to have the camera off, and that's totally okay. But otherwise, like, it's so much nicer to be able to see people. You know what it's like. So come on, unvideo mute yourself. Ironbark, most of you, I think, are familiar with Ironbark, so I'll go through this quite quickly, but we've been around for about 20 years. All we do is work with councils on emission reduction and climate projects. So that means we've got a lighting program, which is the focus of today's webinar, where we work with councils to help them change their lights to LEDs and smart lighting, improve their lighting, reduce energy, improve environmental conditions, and reduce emissions. And we've got a climate team. that works on basically everything to do with a climate greenhouse emissions reduction within a council, their corporate and operational emissions. It's all we've been doing for about 20 years. There's about 530 odd councils in Australia. And since we started our journey, we've worked with about 280 of them now, I think, covering about 86% of the population in every state, in every territory. That's all we do. We also have units that work on software development in both of those teams as well, which we'll touch on a bit today with the Opticity software. This is the lighting team, or some of the lighting team. In the last decade, I think we've worked on about 1,000 odd projects on street lighting alone, lighting design, open space lighting, compliance mapping, and the implementation and project management of bulk changeovers. And so I think, as again, most of the people here online would know, this is our bread and butter. This is where we started our journey about 20 years ago, and we still do it with councils, distribution businesses, state governments, all around Australia, working with them for better lighting outcomes. Briefly about you. So these are the responses to the questions that we asked, just to give you a bit of an idea about where everyone is at, I guess, and so you maybe don't feel alone with some of these questions and responses. We asked whether you understand how your unmetered lighting asset base, or the distribution business owned and operated lights, changes over time. Most people say, I got no idea what's going on there. Some have a little bit of an idea. Good to know. We asked how much you know about your council's metered lighting assets, and this basically got a not really too interested kind of a response, which is okay. Some have a bit of an idea, but it doesn't seem like it's a high priority. So I guess it's good to know. And we also asked you to just hazard a bit of a guess about how many lights have been changed over via the MAV Ironbark street lighting program over the last 12 years, I think it is now, or 11 or 12 years. So this is into the third tranche of this program. And I know some people, not naming names, Michelle and Brent, have been there from the very start, when we were changing, 80 watt mercury vapors with T5s and then eventually LEDs. It's been a long time, and apart from I think it's sort of neck and neck, the big PPA project, as a whole, it's still the largest energy reduction, emissions reduction project in Victorian history. We're at 367,000 odd lights. And so pretty remarkable project or program, really. And the combined savings over that time has been $678 million, which is an enormous amount of financial savings for councils and ratepayers. I'm now going to pass over to Steve Downs, the Business Manager of Relationships at MAV. I'm also going to quickly do a shifty screen sharing change with Ross McCurdy. So Ross, over to you if you don't mind, but otherwise, Steve, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and welcome? And then
yeah, sure. Yep, no worries. First of all, apologies, Kim Dowling couldn't attend. She's got some personal problems she's taking care of, which is unfortunate. But I'll do my best. For those who do know me, I've been with the MAV for around about 10 years. I've been in the space though for about 17 years. I was prior with Procurement Australia before that. But yeah, look, it's really just to, I'm not going to harp on about what the MAV does in great detail, but because there's a lot of people in this meeting who are going to be environmental, etc. We've got different arms of the council that need to talk to each other. So really what I'm going to talk about is first of all, who we are. We've been at MAV Procurement for 10 years. Prior to that, we were CPS. For those who have been here long enough, they'll know that CPS was running for quite some time. So we took that division over. And then the MAV, we've basically, it's all the goods and services within local government that council need is what we are out there tendering for. You probably see in the coming years, we will actually reduce our contracts because we are trying to get into a space where it's more added value. So we don't want to be doing the same old for the sake of just having contracts. We want to digress into different areas. Currently, we've got 31 contracts I think it's a little bit more. I think there's about 2 more to be added to that. But basically, that's the commonly used items and goods within local government. So as I said, watch this space. We will digress into other areas. Next slide. So the whole reason that the MAV are here is to save you guys time, effort, energy, resources. But what is most important is the risk, because just to let you know, we've currently completed the procurement guidelines. So that was what the state government were writing for local government. The person doing that left, so we took that over. So that's been about 6 to 8 months in the planning. There's a lot of work that's gone into that, but just to let you guys know, what that means is that because Section 186 of the Local Government Act has diminished, it's no longer, and the guidelines are there to help you guys when putting something together, what you need to do. So the major part of that is collaboration. So what we've done, like with this contract, is we've gone out on behalf of 79 councils. Collaboration's done. We mitigate the risk in probity, governance, all those areas. So the beauty of going through our contracts is that when you put your business case forward to your directors or even the procurement area, that they know it's the MAV contract, and it's basically, it's straight away a tick, because we've done all the work up and beyond that you would need to do. So you can actually buy in confidence knowing that you're buying from an MAV contract. Also, you have the support as well, because the head of agreement lies with the MAV. So a typical example is that even if council's got their own contract, something goes pear-shaped, they actually talk to, the suppliers goes backwards and forwards. So we have a more of a, depends on the contract, like a national presence. So we actually get things done a lot more efficiently as well. The training part, we have the e-learning modules for those who are new to council, which means you can actually just download them and do it at your own time. So there's a lot of backing, a lot of support. The whole reason the MAV are here is not to make money from councils. We actually reinvest every bit of money that we get through rebates back into local government, and all those training sessions that people attend and all that support, it goes back into councils. Next slide. Excuse me. Just quickly before I go into this slide, just to let you know, for those of you, all our contracts are loaded onto vendor panel, and when you go into vendor panel, we will have things in there like our evaluation report and typically pricing. There's some contracts who are more commercially sensitive than others. This is one of them. And we ask that if you are after pricing, please request this through Kim Dowling. So it's the case of an email or a phone call, and you must treat this as commercial in confidence, because we've had in the past, I'm not saying this contract, but we've had in the past that people will get our pricing and then we will attend an RPN meeting and someone will say, yes, we were speaking to such and such and we got the pricing from them, and we would just sit back and think, it's not what it's about. It waters down, it devalues the contract, because as much as we can all get a price today on any product, the next time you ask for that price, it may be 3 times the amount. So we do lock in suppliers over a 12-month, 3-year period, whatever it is. This contract is running for 3 years. It started in 2022, and it's a 3-year +1+1. So it's running for 5 years essentially. And when you do ask for a quote from Kim, please make sure that you do attach the contract number. That's SL8010 and SL3911. So this contract does allow for the provision of street lighting. Suppliers, when they did respond, they were all encouraged to put forward their smart PE sales, which is a great segue and timing to pass back to Ross and Lex.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. I will press on if I can get the next slide moving. Here we go. All right. I was introduced before, but hello, everyone. I'm Ross. I'm a street lighting project manager at Ironbark. Been there for around 10 or so years. the first thing I'll go over is Ironbark's role in relation to the MAV street lighting program. So I'll quickly summarise our role. I'm just going to move some stuff around on my screen so I can see what I'm looking at. Essentially, there's two parts to our role. Firstly, we assist the MAV with establishing and maintaining the SL3911 hardware and installation services panel. So that's one of the two that Steve just mentioned. So that's where you can go to procure lights and installation services. The second parallel role is under that other contract number that Steve just mentioned, is SL8010. We provide expert street lighting project management and ongoing support to councils. So the MAV has gone out to market and engaged us on behalf of councils to provide that support to you. So these 6 steps that I'm sure will look familiar to at least some of you are the basic steps of delivering a streetlight bulk change and then moving on into the ongoing management of streetlights once they've been upgraded. This is best practice. Support with all of these steps is available from Ironbark under the MAV Smart Street Lighting Program. Following this structure, I'm going to relatively quickly go through each of these steps and describe each in a little bit of detail. And then that'll take about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'm going to present the Opticity Street Lighting Asset Management Platform that Lex mentioned at the start, which again, some of you will be familiar with on projects you've already done with us. And then after that, I'm going to finish off giving a quick update on smart lighting in Victoria, which is probably, out of everything we're going to talk about today, is the most interesting cutting edge stuff. Okay, so street lighting best practice, those 6 steps, let's get into them in a little bit of detail. So the first step is typically the prepare stage. We refer to it as the prepare stage. It's typically business case development, which serves as a tool for securing internal commitment from council. And helps with preparing costs and savings, cash flows, preparing for funding rounds, and so on. This initial prepare phase also begins getting council ready for engaging with other key stakeholders, such as this mob. So DNSPs, you are generally with one DNSP. A few of you might be with a couple of DNSPs if you're lucky. Vic Roads or Department of Transport and Planning, as we now have to call them. They are also a relevant stakeholder. Also, there's your own local council community. These days, the majority of councils, it's fair to say, will probably have completed the upgrade of most of their residential street lighting, especially when it comes to standard lights. So the focus is now turning more to major roads, decoratives, and also the integration of smarts, or considering the integration of smarts. At this early prepare phase, we also often recommend dovetailing a business case with a field audit to confirm the accuracy of any DNSP data upon which the business case is based. That's especially the case for decorative lighting. As some of you will know, DNSP data can be quite inaccurate, especially when it comes to decorative lighting, and that varies from DNSP to DNSP as well, it's fair to say. And incorrect data fed into the business case can have a huge impact on the numbers that are punched out. So once upon a time, we just rely on the DNSP data, but nowadays it's caused too many problems in the past, so we often recommend an audit to clean that data up before the business case is completed. Following business case development, the second stage is to secure funding. The vast majority of councils fund these projects from capital works budgets, but some fund them from operational or operations budgets as well. For any streetlight upgrade, you should also be looking to leverage the Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme, in other words, VEECs, Victorian Energy Efficiency Certificates. Use those to subsidise the cost of any upgrade because lighting is eligible under the scheme. Based on current VEEC spot prices, so the price you'll get for a certificate if you go and sell it on the market, you can expect for a major road light a subsidy of around about $250 per major road light. VEEC spot prices are quite high at the moment, so it is a great time to be doing street light upgrades because the subsidy is quite big. The only an important, maybe relatively new development under the VEEC scheme came about this year is that mercury vapour lights are no longer eligible. They've been removed. So from this point on, I think that happened at the start of the year. So from this point on, any remaining mercury vapours that you haven't already replaced, unfortunately, you won't be able to create VEECs for those. But I think for most of you, you find it's other type technologies that you're now focused on for the most part. As of late, and by late I mean probably the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of councils have also been leveraging LRCI funding, or local roads and community infrastructure funding from the federal government. Under that scheme, lighting is eligible as well. So there's some funding options, or the main funding options that most projects use. While we're on the topic of funding, it's worth talking quickly about DTP, or formerly Vic Roads. So Department of Transport and Planning will co-fund cost-shared lighting upgrades. That wasn't always the case. It's been a long journey to this point where they will offer to contribute to an upgrade. Under the arrangement that DTP is offering to councils, they pay back their share of the upgrade through their operational budget. In other words, it's the operational savings that come through to them as a result of you doing the upgrade. So savings in electricity costs, maintenance costs, they use those savings and sort of redirect them to council on a yearly basis to help pay their share. So effectively, it's a cash neutral proposition for them. They don't have to find budget. Pardon me. In practice, the way it works is that it's a yearly payment from DTP to council, and that starts, the first yearly payment is on the first anniversary of completion of an upgrade, and that yearly amount is specified in the agreement between council and DTP. The really important point to hammer home here is if you're planning for an upgrade that involves cost-shared lighting and you want to access or set up an agreement with DTP, allow at least 3 months to get that agreement. DTP do not move fast, so you need to get that sorted out early. Okay, so the next stage, the define stage. So you've got the support, you've got the money. It's now time to define exactly what you're doing and how you're going to do it. So typically, best practice involves a development of a project plan, which has all the details, the timelines, the data, etc. There'll be a communications plan and a communications planning process, which typically has 2 audiences. There'd be an internal stakeholder communications part to that and an external sort of community-facing communications program. And probably the most critical part of all of this is the design plan. This is where you're making decisions about lighting. So types of lights to replace, as part of that, considering other factors that influence what types of lights you want to put in. So perhaps considering crime, public transport routes, traffic treatments, and so on. You definitely should be, if you're doing best practice, looking at the compliance of the lighting upgrade that's going in, and also giving some consideration to the negative environmental impacts of street lighting as well, and building a response to that into your lighting design. Okay, so the procure stage. So once the design is complete and you know what you need or want, then councils can use the MAV panel to leverage the combined purchasing power of all Victorian councils to obtain materials, and so lights and PE cells and whatever else is needed for the upgrade. And you can procure installation services as well. Depending on which DNSP area you are in, your DNSP will either allow you to procure hardware, installation services and project management services, or they will only allow you to procure hardware, and they will project manage the install and procure the installation services themselves. So a lot of you, if you've done a past project, you'll know the situation you're in with your DNSP. Of course, if you don't use the MAV panel for procurement, that's fine. You don't have to, but you'll, as Steve was saying, it's intended to save you work and a lot of time. So you'd have to run your own procurement process. Okay, after that comes the management and oversight of the installation. So this involves a whole bunch of stuff, but it's probably the hard part is getting to this point, really. So now you're just ensuring clear internal communication. You are dealing with complaints, timelines, media, contract variations, incidents, making sure invoicing is paid or processed properly. You're most likely implementing education and promotion. As part of our support package, we'd definitely be helping you identify any further projects to consider once this one is finished, and we'd sort of scope support for those extra projects up on a case-by-case basis. We'd be helping you ensure any faults are rectified and assisting with completing outcomes reporting, whether that's for council or any funding bodies that have helped fund the program. Okay, the final step is the ongoing management. So the lights are in, but it doesn't stop there. Once an upgrade is complete, we then move into the ongoing management, which is things like responding to faults, responding to resident complaints and queries. Getting to click my screen here. So responding to faults, responding to resident complaints and queries, going and investigating them on site potentially. And also, if you have non-standard or decorative lighting, then there's a role for you in managing the maintenance of those non-standard stock. It's also important to note that lighting inventories and the associated DNSP data, the DNSP inventory, that data never stays still. Over time, errors creep in through incorrect data entry, manual data entry, through routine maintenance, changes in the field. It's not a static, watertight piece of a data set. So best practice certainly involves active, ongoing involvement in making sure that it's kept up to date and is useful. Okay, so that was best practice in a nutshell, the quickfire run through. What I want to do now is...
Ross, do you mind if I just interrupt for a quick second and just go, there's a question or two that's on the line that might be good to go through here because it was related to the section that you've just done.
Yep.
So from Michelle, and it could be for all of you guys, Steve, it'd be great to get your take on this as well. Hume's finance department's concerned about using their capital budget for funding of assets that don't belong to council. Any advice or somewhere I can point to that indicates that this is okay or doable? My initial cheeky answer, Michelle, would be that I'm sure they have they could look internally for a precedent there because they've done it before. But otherwise, it's pretty much every council I think does. Keith, Ross, Steve?
It'll be a good one to take back to my group. I mean, Hume, Dominic Isola was the ex-CEO there, so you'll get some sound advice, but it's one that, I could take back to Dom and ask him and see what recommendations he would actually give. But off the top, I couldn't ask. I couldn't answer that one.
As I said on that slide, there's certainly precedent that plenty of other councils have used their capital budget. So if you were after some examples of other councils with some contact details, I'm sure we could find them.
You're on mute if you're trying to talk, Michelle.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great, Steve, if you could come back with something. Just to clarify, we do have budget, but there's discussions about whether it should be reallocated to operational to be totally above board. Thanks.
It is a question, or I've heard that comes up in my experience every couple of years from councils. I mean, look, you could start with like from Yarra or the team there at Indy, because I know it came up with them recently or in a discussion when they were trying to advise other councils. But otherwise, yeah, like as you'd be aware, it's certainly the precedent. I think is just about every council in Victoria has used their capital works budget for paying for an asset that they don't own and operate. But if you want to make sure it's ticked above board, great point. Thank you, Steve, then for looking into it. Another question that came through just behind the scenes here was around the VEECs, Ross, or James. Are we accredited to create the VEECs for Victorian energy upgrades?
We're not accredited to actually create the VEECs. We work with an accredited person, or is it accredited provider, an AP?
Accredited provider, yep.
Yeah, so again, councils can engage any AP they like and we'll work with them, but we do work with our preferred AP, but you still do need, another part of that is you still do need an accredited lighting designer such as Ironbark to create a lot of the evidence.
Great, thank you. And another question just around the bulk change in the auditing roster came through, and is that a potential change? And so we often now suggest that councils carry out an audit before even undertaking a business case. In the past, we potentially have suggested otherwise. Is that because we've sort of moved on from just 1-for-1 PCATs to VCATs and decoratives, or is that something we'd recommend across the board now?
James or Keith might have some comments on this as well, but I think it's based on, there have been some particularly messy projects, in particular DNSPs, where the data has been absolutely awful, which has made us reflect on what we should be doing when. Forever, when you're doing decoratives, we've always recommended doing a decorative audit, a field audit, to identify exactly what lights are there, the colours, the attachments, and things like that. But often that would come after the business case. So I think given the depth of the issues that we've had, under certain circumstances, we're now suggesting do that audit before you do the business case, because doing the audit down the track, there's been such a huge change to the costs of a project that it really needed to be identified earlier on. Keith or James, anything to add on that?
Nothing to add from me.
No.
Great. Thanks, Ross. Back to you. Keep the questions coming.
No worries. Okay, so yes, that was best practice in a nutshell. I'm going to talk about opticity now. I want to talk about how opticity is used to deliver a best practice lighting upgrade and to support best practice ongoing lighting asset management. If you didn't know, opticity is Ironbark's own proprietary web-based street lighting asset management platform. It's got it provides a range of tools, and I'm going to show how the various tools can be used for specifically lighting design, project delivery, and ongoing asset management after an installation, or in between actual upgrades. So the next few slides are going to show some example opticity tools from various councils around the country. So strap in, we're about to do a bit of a around the grounds. First off is the compliance analyzer tool. So the example I've got on screen here is a compliance analyzer set up and used by the Shire of Augusta Margaret River in Western Australia. The compliance analyzer it's a tool to support the lighting design process. So that step. It typically within the tool, we typically have a range of different data sets, including lighting compliance levels for each light, other data layers that are useful for making decisions like traffic accident data, bike paths and public transport routes, road classifications, and so on. So just to give you, if you haven't seen this before, just to give you some introduction to it, we're looking at an aerial map. Obviously, each individual dot, it represents a light. The color coding of the dot reflects the compliance of the light. So you can see on the legend here, your attention probably is and should be drawn to the red dots, which are non-compliant lights. There's some other information in here. You click on a light, you can get basic asset information and compliance information. And then I'll talk a little bit about what this halo around some lights means a bit later, but there's various layers you can toggle on and off, filters you can apply, charts that you can toggle on and off to help interrogate what you're looking at. So there are two key things the compliance analyzer allows you to do during your design development phase. Firstly, it's to identify non-compliances, and then secondly, to identify sort of the opposite of that, to identify overlighting, where there's risk of spill lighting, nuisance lighting, just wastage, unnecessary lighting where you could be saving energy. The Margaret River example here also includes a light spill assessment, risk assessment, which enabled the Shire to preemptively take actions to mitigate light spill and ahead of resident complaints. So that might involve putting in glare shields or making some other physical change to the light or the wattage of it to reduce that glare light spill. And there was also a safety risk assessment, which identifies high-risk locations where non-compliances should, if present, really be addressed. Sort of helps target your focus. And if you've got any non-compliant lights at high-risk sites, then maybe if you're going to address any of them, those are the ones you should address. So there's two layers you can toggle on and off. The one toggled on now is the light spill risk. The halo around these lights is colour-coded, and you can see down here that these lights at this roundabout have been assessed as having a medium light spill risk. This light green halo has no light spill risk or low. All of this information combined allows council to make informed decisions about where to deviate from a basic like-for-like upgrade, which is typically the starting point, and also to know where the risk of light spill is maybe unacceptable and may need to be mitigated. The final thing to mention here is that councils will often undertake a before and after compliance assessment. So what you can see here is the compliance of the lights after they've been upgraded, but the compliance analyzer can also present the compliance of the lights before they were upgraded, the old lights. And this is really useful for communicating the improvements to road safety as a result of the upgrade. So you can toggle between the two and see that levels of non-compliance have dropped as we switch everything to LED. All right, the second example I want to talk about is the Environmental Explorer tool. And this example is from Mackay Regional Council in Queensland. So the Environmental Explorer is used to consider alternative design options for environmentally sensitive locations within a council area. It combines lighting data with the identification of areas or species sensitive to light at night. So in this Mackay example, the green line you can see is along the coast or the beach, and that's where turtle nesting occurs. That was a key concern of Mackay Regional Council. What we do is individual light risk is then classified based on key characteristics such as mounting height, light output, colour temperature, distance to or from the sensitive area. And in using this information in response, councils can choose a variety of mitigations, including things like reducing the wattage, using an alternative colour temperature, reducing the mounting height or changing the orientation of the light, or even if smarts is a possibility, dimming or switching a light off after a certain time. Another example of the Enviro Explorer, this one is from Parramatta in Western Sydney. Their focus was slightly different. Instead of turtles, no turtles, I don't think, in Western Sydney. Instead, Parramatta were looking at, they were concerned about certain endangered species like bogong moth and looking at their migration routes and their presence in core bushland areas. So you can see they mapped habitat corridors and some core bushland area, and lights that were located in or around these areas had the mitigation was putting on glare shielding, and because Smarts was involved in this project, they're dimming these lights as well. So you can see there's a couple of lights here that were within the area that are classified as high risk. So they've had glare shields applied, and then these orange lights on the periphery of the area were classified as medium risk, and they've also had ones immediately adjacent to the area have had glare shields applied as well. All right, third example is the installation tracker tool. This example is from Monash here in Victoria. So I'm not sure, I didn't look at the full list of people. I'm not sure if we've got anybody from Monash here. This is probably the simplest project tool. So again, it's a bit zoomed out, but the small color-coded dots, each dot is a light. In this case, the colour coding isn't compliant. It's an indication of whether or not the light has been upgraded yet. So red is yet to be upgraded. Green is successfully upgraded. There are other colours indicating that the light needs to be revisited. It's unable to be replaced, whatever. There is a time slider, so you can click play on that and see progress over time, see more green dots appearing. Pardon me. And then there's various charts you can toggle off. This one's a date series showing how many lights were installed on a given day. So the install tracker integrates with the data collection software being used by an installation contractor. So Ironbark's managing the installer. There's a particular piece of software that we give them called Fulcrum, and that integrates into this system. So there's live updates from that app on their iPad in the truck. But it can be set up to integrate with any other data feed, for example, Salesforce, which I know City Power Core use. Some councils have sought to integrate this map as a website plugin for their public-facing reporting to residents. So it's a great way of demonstrating transparency for ratepayers. And where that's been done, typically it's sort of, we present it as a white label option. It can be a white label option where sort of opticity on Ironbark branding is absent and council's logo is prominent on the site. What this means from a project delivery perspective is that there are no reports required to council on progress. All of this automatically updates, and this saves on reporting costs for a project. We've found it's about half a day per month as a project progresses that we no longer have to do reporting, so it reduces costs. Okay, the next example, and don't be overwhelmed by the explosion of dots. This is the Asset Mapper Pro tool, and this is Burundara, again in Victoria. So now we've moved from using the opticity tools as either project design or project delivery tool to an ongoing asset management tool, and to assist with complaints management especially. So the asset mapper combines a wide range of useful asset information. You can see some of the information on the left and some of the filters. This includes things like light type, wattage, spill risk, safety risk, actual compliance standard, as well as expected standard. So there can be a difference between what a light is actually achieving in terms of compliance and what it probably should be achieving based on the type of road or the road classification that it's on. And all of this information allows council staff to really quickly and accurately respond to resident complaints. We were for a time, so the reason the Asset Mapper Pro came into existence is because we were seeing that councils were using their compliance analyzer, which I showed you at the start, to do this, using it for that purpose, to very quickly identify a light, see what it is, what's going on, to enable them to respond to a resident complaint. The issue was that the compliance analyzer was from a point in time before the project or the upgrade was done. And often, as you'd all probably be well aware, when a project's actually delivered, there are on-the-ground differences, which mean the original compliance design is not actually what's fully implemented. There's changes. So Asset Mapper Pro is a post-project accurate reflection of what's on the ground. So, for example, the way this might work is a complaint's received, council staffer logs in, reviews the map, and either the complaint is resolved, so if the light is found to be compliant, so there's no underlighting if the complaint was about underlighting, or if the map shows that the light is under compliant, then a contractor can be sent out to look at the site, propose a design solution if that light's non-compliant. Using this system, Ironbark's basically halved its complaint call-outs for councils we support and reduce the time it takes to resolve resident complaints by about 50%. That's been proven very useful. Okay.
Ross or
Yeah, go Lex.
James, or Ross, James or Keith, do you know how many councils are using Opticity at the moment?
Good question. Somebody could look it up while we're presenting.
About how is it being used much?
It is.
Okay.
Some of the tools we just went through are project tools. So any council that undertakes a project will get access to Opticity.
Gotcha.
And access to the more static type maps. And so yeah, there's, I don't know, 50 odd councils that have access to some kind of maps.
Right.
And as you can see from these examples, they're spread around the country. It's not just Victoria, but they're generally useful.
No dramas, thank you. No, well, I've got no more questions here unless anyone else does. So,
Charge on. Okay. Come back to So now I wanted to talk about smart lighting, which, as I said at the start, is probably for us it's the most exciting thing. In a moment, I'll demonstrate another tool in Opticity called the Smarts Manager that's been used by, the example I'll show is Parramatta, again in Western Sydney. But before I do, it's probably useful to do a quick recap of what we mean by smart lighting, and also to summarise a couple of key developments that are on the horizon, which we expect will help facilitate smart lighting in Victoria, because the rollout of smart lighting in Victoria to date has been pretty limited for various reasons. But there is stuff coming, which is exciting. So firstly, it's worth quickly distinguishing between smart cities on the one hand and smart lighting, because the two often get confused. For us, and if you'd asked us 3-4 years ago, what is smart lighting, we probably would have struggled to give you a clear answer. And what is a smart city? It's taken everybody a while to sort of settle in and work out what this all means in a lighting context and for the work that we do. So smart cities for us means any connected device. That could be a bin, traffic counter, parking monitor, CCTV, anything. The sky is the limit. Go nuts. But when it comes to smart street lighting, essentially for us, we've narrowed it down, and that means a street light that can remotely communicate with a network. There is some piece of software, or what you might call a CMS, central management system, at the other end of that network. The light can report on its status, so it can say, I'm on, I'm off, how much power I'm using, I'm faulty, I'm not working. And also that light can be controlled, so it could be dimmed, switched off, tuned up, any of those things. So currently in Victoria, we have the luminaires on the right, starting on the right of screen. We have the smart nodes approved, and we have the DNSPs all have a smart communications network for the existing meters. You know, the one you've got on your house is a wireless smart meter. But the missing piece of the puzzle as far as street lighting is concerned is the CMS, or the software interface at the other end, that allows you to receive, interpret data from the light and send it instructions. Importantly, the other missing bit, which leads on to what I'm going to talk about next, is the ability to meter individual lights via their smart nodes, and therefore reap any cost savings from dimming. But there is hope, which takes me to the next slide. A couple of key developments on the horizon. Since December 2022, the Australian Energy Market Commission has been consulting on a rule change that would allow that metering of smart lighting. So each individual smart node plugged into a light would become a meter in its own right and allow us to claim energy savings in your bill from dimming your electricity bill. The consultation process is ongoing, but we're expecting a draft determination early next year. That'll be followed by a further round of public consultation before they issue the final determination. But it's progress, and we're getting to a point where this is all required to, because the current rules do not allow for metering of individual street lights using the smart nodes. And there's been a recognition that the rules need to change to allow that to happen, because there's huge benefits that can come from it. So watch that space. When the draft determination comes out, expect to hear from us, because we'll be relaying, synthesising what it means, what's been said, and passing that information on. The other key development, which is particularly relevant to Victoria, is that City Power, Powercor and United Energy are suggesting they will begin building a street lighting CMS, that missing component, next calendar year. Now, don't hold us to that time frame. This is simply what they're indicating at the moment, and it's very exciting. So if you're a City Power, Powercor, United Energy Council, this is great news. And we would probably expect the other distributors, Gemina and AusNet, to follow suit. Not sure how fast, but we expect that to happen. The point is these two developments, so that the big picture is that these two developments combined will bring dimming, smart metering, and realising those savings a step closer in Victoria. Perhaps the other useful thing to mention on smarts is that even in the absence of smart metering, which will let you claim savings in your electricity bill, we understand it'll be possible to create VEECs from dimming, which is another way of subsidising the upfront cost of setting up smarts. So that's if you get to the point where you're doing a smart project, that is definitely something you should be considering talking to us or your accredited provider, your AP, about generating those certificates. Okay, so that's the new stuff that's coming, which is very exciting. Once we're at the point where smarts is possible for Victorian councils, this is how you might do it and how you could use Opticity to implement, design for, commission and manage your smart lighting. So what you can see on screen is the Smarts Manager tool in Opticity for Parramatta. Parramatta and their DNSP Endeavour Energy, with support from us, they're currently in the final stages of installing around 4,500 major road or Category B smart street lights. So Parramatta, like that best practice process I ran through earlier, they went through all the typical design steps, looking at compliance, working out what LED they were going to put in at each location. The lights that went up were smart, so the subsequent step is to do the smart design analysis. So it's more than just looking at compliance and what LED to put in, but it's then working out, okay, now we've put that LED in, how much can we tune it down, do we dim, and so on. So what you can see in this image is a 3D visualization of trimming, what we call trimming and dimming settings of a smart lighting design. So each column, we sort of have a side view. Each column represents a light. And the clear part of the column up the top is where the light is currently overlit compared to what it needs to be lit. And you can trim off that overlighting down to the top of the yellow segment. So that's something you can do straight away, trim down the light, get rid of all that excess usage, still comply with what you need in terms of light levels, but save energy and wasted light. The yellow part of the column represents the standard lighting level at its highest. So to meet the requirements of, say, if I start talking standards and categories, category V3 on a given major road, the orange part of the column is the required lighting for dimming. For example, to meet the requirements of a category V5, which is the next step down in standard. That's saving further energy and wasted light. In some instances, often where the design is non-compliant overall, these columns are completely orange. So because the lights, given the lights that are there and the distance between them, there's no opportunity to do any trimming or dimming. They need to stay at their maximum output, which is fine. It's a case-by-case basis. In Parramatta's case, lights are trimmed down to the top of the yellow column during peak hours, and then so that's from sunrise to around about 11 p.m. And then during off-peak hours, from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. is what they decided. These lights are dimmed down to that orange level. So for a good chunk of the night, when traffic levels are lower, road usage is lower, they can step the lights down even further to a lower compliance level, because that's what's appropriate for that time of night. Apart from better lighting outcomes, you can see the chart that's just popped up in the bottom right-hand corner. And another key benefit of the smart lighting approach for Parramatta was increasing energy and greenhouse savings by an additional roughly 46%. And that's as a function of that trimming, dimming, and another feature of smart lights called constant light output, which trims a bit more energy usage. So that's good. It's quite a significant saving by implementing smarts. Once your smart installation is set up, so it's installed, it's been commissioned and programmed, the smarts, of course, allow council to monitor and manage the lights going forward. So faults can be seen immediately ahead of reporting by the public, which is the way it's been done for years and years and years. You have to wait for someone to see it and call up and complain about it. They can visualise the trimming and dimming settings and alter them in response to changing needs or resident complaints. So Parramatta's had at least a couple of complaints from residents since these lights went in, saying, look, the lighting level on our streets is too low. There's been some burglaries. We'd like you to, we don't think the lighting is high enough, so they've been able to get into the system and tune those lights back up to compensate. So again, on this image here, the green dots, each dot is a light. And in this case, the colour coding is a green dot is a light communicating with the network with no issues. Orange dots are lights that have some non-critical operational or comms issue. And red dots are lights that have some critical issue. For example, the light is not on, so it's a risk. There's no red dots on this image, but this is from some time ago. But last week we were in the system for Parramatta and there were 2 lights that had failed. So Endeavour has been notified and they're sending someone out, or probably have by now, they've sent someone out to replace those lights or fix them. Final thing to say about the Smarts Manager is and what it can be used for is that it's important to note that the actual commissioning of smart lighting is not always smooth. So once when it's just an LED, it's relatively simple. You plug it in, wire it up, turn it on, they check it on the ground, and then they drive away, trust that everything works. But given you've got a smart node, which needs to be properly commissioned, there's a bit of an extra process, and it needs to start communicating with the network. There are more things that can go wrong with the installation, mainly due to human error when it comes to the physical installation. A good example of one such problem is smart node location errors, which in our experience can be as much as 4% of total lights installed in an upgrade. So in this image, you can see a dotted line, which is where a node was in the wrong location compared to where it should be. So this is, you understand that these nodes can report their location, their GIS coordinates to the network, but then within Endeavour Energy or your DNSP's inventory, that asset has a GIS coordinate recorded separately, and sometimes those two things don't match up. So this is an example. I'm not sure what the distance is there, maybe 100 meters difference between where the DNSP data said the light should be and where the light is recording. So this has a large impact. Why this is an issue is because it has a huge impact on compliance, as any light that is out of place, so more than 20 meters from its GIS location, means the lighting design work that was done is probably wrong. So there's risks in terms of compliance, and that risk lies with the DNSP, essentially. They're liable given their data was wrong. I'm just conscious of the time, Lex. It's 11. We're close to the end, and then we can. Are you okay if we keep going? And then we'll get into the questions. Yep. Okay. Finally, so smart lighting lessons and trends. Having done a few smart lighting projects such as Parramatta, there's a few key learnings and trends. First is don't do bulk dimming. For example, don't install smart lights and then just go, we're going to dim every light 25% across the board. That's because you've seen in that Parramatta example, each light is unique. If you do that, you'll probably miss out on additional savings. And also conversely, you'll risk creating non-compliance in certain locations where a light, for example, shouldn't be dimmed. So the dimming settings need to be considered separately for each individual light. Second point is it's probably not worth spending millions putting up smarts in residential streets. Main roads, yes, because there is that opportunity for dimming and trimming. So that's a financial reason why you might not do minor roads. However, if you're a council that has significant environmental areas and concerns, and you're perhaps interested in switching off lights, whether they're on major roads or minor roads, it can be financially viable to do that on a residential street because you're switching them off 100. You're making 100% savings. And that might sound crazy, but there are actually some Australian councils who are scoping this for residential street lighting and intending to trial it. Third point is that CMSs, that software that connects to the lights, they can be overwhelming for the casual user. To get the info you want from a straight CMS, like what's light 1A doing? Is that a fault? Which of the 58 fault types is the bad one? I can't work it out. Increasingly, we're seeing councils and DNSPs both recognise the need for an in-between interface that's more user-friendly and targeted to what the end user, whether that's the council or the DNSP, actually wants and needs to manage their lighting. And this in-between interface is sometimes referred to as a CLIP, or a customer lighting insights portal. Opticity is a perfect example of this. That's what it can be used for. That's what it's designed for. Final point around governance and control. So DNSPs and councils tend to be on the same page. We're finding that councils don't want full access and full control of smart lighting, given the safety risks. The risk of a staff person accidentally getting in there and switching a light off and causing all sorts of problems. So as part of doing and setting up smart lighting, we're clearly laying out the arrangements for control and access to a smart lighting system is critical. It should be part of the process. That's it. Thanks, everyone. And I'll throw back to you, Lex, to facilitate any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Ross. I'll open it up to the floor. If you have any questions, please jump in. You may either just unmute yourself, keep it informal.
It's Steve here. Just on the question from Michelle, just to let you know, Dominic did respond back already and just said, look, it's best if you contact your CFO, because each council is uniquely different. So everyone has a different take on that. And he just said, yeah, that's the best avenue. And also, before I forget, if everyone in this meeting doesn't have access to vendor panel, please, we'll put my email somewhere. They can contact me and I can give you access, because you need to have a look at vendor panel and who's on there and all the details that you will need going forward.
Thanks, Steve. One question that's come through was, what percentage of lights are actually smart enabled? What are you finding, Ross and Keith and James, as opposed to smart ready? So what I mean by that is those that were, I think what the question means is those that are sort of smart ready, which is, you know, with the right NEMA 7-pin cell. So down the track, we can always put smarts in, but might not ever really do it, compared to those that are actually saying, no, we're putting in the smart cell now as well. So we're ready to go. What are we seeing?
I would say in Victoria there'd be at least 30,000, 40,000 lights installed with smart cells out of, I don't know how many, but it's not a big percentage. Interstate, I'm not sure. Maybe Ross or Keith knows a bit more.
Yeah, I was going to say the only caveat to that, I guess, the definition of smart enabled probably also means having that CMS component. So the Victorian lights are 90% of the way there. Those 30,000 that you mentioned, they have everything installed and are actually communicating with the network, but there's just that there's not that software to do anything with them. Off the top of my head, so there are those Western Sydney lights, Parramatta, in the Endeavour Energy region, which are up and running. That's around 5,000 or just under 5,000 major road lights. Ausgrid in New South Wales is currently rolling out smart LEDs on all of their major road lightings across their entire network. So they're doing that for their councils. They're not waiting for councils to ask for it. They're just doing it by default. So that's in the tens of thousands of lights. Can't remember the exact number, maybe 50 or 60,000 major road lights. Keith, you might have an update on, or some up-to-date ideas on Western Australia and Queensland.
Slow going in Western Australia, but they do have plans to install 45,000 odd in the next couple of years. Queensland anticipating 10,000, but really only at the 50 to 100 units trial stage. And then moving back to Victoria, it's Geelong with probably 10,000 currently installed, but moving towards 20,000 by the end of their current program. City of Melbourne went well ahead and put smarts on all of those ahead of a system being in place. And then Wyndham's installed a few, and other councils are installing a few to assist in managing resident spill requests. So they'll just put in one cell, and then the DNSP can control those lights through a back door and just dim those individual lights. And I suppose the logic for the likes of Geelong and City of Melbourne and Victoria is get the cells up while you're doing your bulk change, so you don't have to revisit again with the same amount of traffic control and labour, which might be another $150, $200 per cell again in 3 years' time.
Is that our advice at the moment, Keith, to, like, when you look at the business case, even if you allow for the fact that you won't be able to capture the financial savings until the AMO change comes on board, but I guess you can always put a discount factor on that, but do we advise that you generally put the smart up there now?
Yeah, or particularly if you're in the City Power, Power Core or UE areas where we know the system is coming. It's inevitable. It's going to come in the next 12 or so months. Our advice is get them up. Otherwise, if you think about what's the labour price is going to be in 3 years' time, it could be $250 extra to come around again. Whereas if you do it in the same sweep, it's practically no extra cost in terms of labour.
Thanks, Keith. Someone just asked about the slides. Good timing. Download the slide deck there. Michelle, I'll come back to your question in a second, but I appreciate that some people might need to leave and didn't have to stick around for all the questions. Please just jump on there. I'll put in the chat where the slide deck is. We're just after some feedback, but it's anonymous. You don't have to give us your email address or anything. You just fill in. It was great, awesome, not great, whatever, submit, and then the slides will come up to you. So please jump in there. Michelle, any time guesstimate from Gemini? They're going to follow City Power Core. Is that straight afterwards, Keith, or does that mean, like, do we have an idea about timing? Are we talking months or years for the CMSs?
So they're regularly contacting Noel and Stuart at City Power Core and saying, when are you going to have something in place? We will copy you.
Okay.
So all Victorian DNSPs through the smart electricity meters have a mesh system in place already. So they're kind of locked into that platform. So ultimately, they're all going to end up with street lighting vision as the central management system. But Gemini and AusNet are kind of looking to City Power Core UE as the leaders, see what they do, then copy.
Yeah, so they'll modify the system, and then Gemini and the others will jump on board, hopefully.
Yeah, likely, jump on the contractual elements of that as well, save them some time with procurement.
Cool, thank you.
I've got a question around the council saying they don't necessarily want full control and access, which is quite interesting to hear that, considering the debate, discussions and arguments, and at times argy-bargy over the last 10, 15 years about street lighting control of the assets and control of everything. And so do you want to just maybe elaborate on that, Keith or Ross, that what you're hearing is that it's like, this is not our bread and butter, so we don't actually want to own and operate smart lighting systems and CMSs. Is that right? Are there any that are saying, no, we want to do it ourselves?
There's different elements to it. So there's the design element. So you have to do a design to determine the levels that you want and ensure that those levels are not going to result in a non-compliance. City of Melbourne are probably the one council in Victoria that could do that. Other councils need external support there. Then there's the programming element, which is getting into the system and making sure that you click the right time, the right dimming level, set the P cell to the right switching mode. Is that all going to be right? And that's probably where the most fear lies. If council staff are going to go in and program 1,000 lights, takes 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes per light. Are they going to make errors? Are they going to accidentally turn lights off? Are they going to keep their passwords secure that allows mass control of all of their lights? Are staff going to be around long enough to maintain knowledge to do that kind of work? So they're the considerations that are making councils fearful of them managing it. They probably want a central system provided by the DNSPs to modify the lights.
Keith?
Maybe a good example is with the Ausgrid project that I mentioned. We're part of that project was developing those governance protocols, and we helped set those up. So Ausgrid went through quite a detailed consultation process with their councils, and Ausgrid's position was we're not comfortable giving you control of the lights for all of the reasons Keith just mentioned. And I think general consensus amongst the councils was, yes, we totally agree. We recognise the complexity of it and the risks involved. We'd rather have the liabilities for control of those lights sitting with the DNSP rather than a project officer who's going to be there for 12 months and then disappear and it all falls over. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ross and Keith. Any final questions before we wrap it up? Speak now or hold your peace. That's not true. You can just probably contact us this afternoon if you want, or tomorrow, next week. But any final questions now? All right. Well, we will wrap it up then. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. Thanks, Michelle. Belinda's already gone. Thanks, Steve from MAV. Much appreciate the update that you've given us there. And to Keith, James, Ross, Charlotte at the back end, and all of the Ironbark crew who were on hand and ready. Neil's been, I'm sure. Appreciate it as always. Download the slide deck and you can get the presentation there. But otherwise, if you've got any other questions, you can contact us at any time. So much appreciated. and we'll catch you at the next one. See you later.